Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our next video. Guys, we are going to be installing a Windows virtual machine into VirtualBox completely from scratch. What you can see on your screen right now is my big fat head talking to you in the upper right hand corner. I believe it's this way. I believe it's that corner. But you can also see my desktop. That is an extended desktop from my main computer. What I'm going to do is install a Windows computer into a virtual machine. And the way we do that is by using what's called a hypervisor, or using what's called really just a virtual machine environment, right? VMware, VirtualBox, and Hyper-V, I think are the three big ones. We're going to be using VirtualBox. VirtualBox is my preferred emulator of choice. Reason being, it is totally free. Everything I'm going to show you how to do here is completely free. It won't cost you a penny to get up and running with your very own Windows virtual machine. Now, the Windows software itself does cost money. I encourage you to buy it from Windows directly. But to get the ISO itself, all you need to do is actually go to Windows itself and just download the ISO file. In fact, I'll show you where you can go for that right now. I'll open up a browser window real quick. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and type in, we'll say Windows ISO. There we go. Windows ISO, and just like that, guys, you can bring up this menu right here. That will bring up our installation media. I'll make another video on what to do throughout this process in particular, because this is actually kind of time consuming, and this is actually kind of a lot to take in. But it is doable. It is simple. It's a little bit scary, just because of how the menus go. It makes you feel like you're going to uninstall your entire operating system on your main computer in order to get the ISO file, but you're not. So long story short, go to Microsoft.com, get the ISO file directly from Windows. Now you can take snapshots of this ISO file, and I'll show you how to do it later on too, to make sure that Windows installation is good to go, to make sure you have a working Windows computer. Why on earth would I want to use a virtual machine instead of my actual machine? Well, virtual machines are better for testing things. They are safer, they're cheaper, and they are easier. I can take a snapshot of it and revert back to what the virtual machine is now. So it is useful to use a virtual machine. Also, if you happen to be a Mac user, this is going to allow you to run Windows applications from your Mac computer. Now, they won't be able to run necessarily on the same system because you'll have your MacBook operating independently from your Windows machine, but you'll only have one set of hardware essentially to interact with. And that's going to simplify things a little bit easier for you. When I was completing my undergraduate, for example, I actually carried two computers. I carried a MacBook and I carried a Windows computer. And my gosh, was it heavy. So if you happen to be using a MacBook that happens to be very thin, very portable, very lightweight, you can throw this Windows machine on your MacBook and it should be just fine. So what we're going to do now is show you how to go about installing a Windows virtual machine inside another computer of your choice. Now, we're going to be using a Windows machine to install another Windows machine, but again, you could be doing this on a Mac. The procedure is pretty much the same, but it's just a little bit different. So without further ado, let's dive right into this and let's jump into the software we're going to use. We're going to use VirtualBox, which is right here. VirtualBox is completely free. Let's say it again, it is completely free. Do not pay for VirtualBox. There's no reason to pay for VirtualBox. Simply Google VirtualBox, download, and then download whatever one matches your architecture and your system, and it should totally be free. It should only take you about, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes to download it too. It's not a huge download. The ISO will take you some time, operating systems will take you some time, but installing VirtualBox in and of itself should not take very long. So once you have VirtualBox installed, which should be pretty simple, I will make a video on that as well if you'd like me to make you one, but I think this one should be just fine. Once you have VirtualBox installed, you will have the ability to go about creating a brand new virtual machine. Now, I happen to be this weirdo who names my virtual machines in ways that I can remember. I like to name all of my virtual machines after Pokemon. You can name your virtual machines whatever you want, but I prefer to name them after Pokemon because I'd never know what they're going to evolve into. Bad joke? Bad joke? I know it's a bad joke, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and dive into making this Windows virtual machine. We're going to go click this button right here that says New. Bang. It's going to ask us what type it's going to be. It's going to ask us to give it a name. What's a good name for a Windows virtual machine? We'll say Mewtwo, because Mewtwo is pretty ubiquitous, and a Windows virtual machine is pretty awesome in terms of what it can do. So our Windows machine is pretty awesome what it can do, I should say. But anyway, we'll make it a Windows machine. We'll say Windows 10. You can use any of these architectures, really, depending on which one you happen to be running. I'm not brave enough to try to run a Windows 95 machine, but if you can find an ISO file for it, I say more power to you. It's probably pretty fun. We're going to dive into Windows 10, and I have a 64-bit architecture, so make sure that you go with that. Now, 32-bit architectures do still exist, but they are quite rare. It's hard to find a Windows 10, really any piece of software really that is 32-bit architecture. So 64-bit is probably what you have, but if you don't have it, make sure you have the one that matches your system entirely. We'll click next. We'll give it some memory. I'm gonna say we'll give it about about 4,000 megabytes. That should be fine. That's probably way too much. In fact, it's double what they recommend, but that should be okay for our purposes here. We will go ahead and create the virtual hard disk. That sounds perfectly fine also. VDI is fine, and we'll make it dynamically allocated as well. If you didn't get a chance to catch my Kali Linux tutorial, I went over this a little more in detail. Basically, the biggest difference here is how quick or how fast you want your virtual machine to be. So if you have this dynamically allocated, it's going to be slower. At fixed size, it's going to be much faster. But dynamically allocated means it's going to be much smaller at the beginning, and it's going to get progressively larger, whereas fixed size means we've decided how big we want this machine to be from the beginning. So we'll say dynamically allocated for now, which should be just fine. The name file is just here, but we're going to change its location a little bit. I'm going to put it on my external hard drive here because it happens to be it happens to have a lot more space on it. So we'll make a new folder, and I will type in, what should we call this one? We'll say this should be, we'll say this should be Mewtwo. Mewtwo, got it. Open, click, and save. Fantastic. So now we have a brand new location there on my external hard drive to house Mewtwo. Now if I unhook my external hard drive, I won't be able to use Mewtwo anymore. So I want to make sure that my external hard drive, which it's out of the camera right now, but I'll make sure that has to be plugged in order for me to run Mewtwo, just like anything else you put on your hard drive. So I think 50 gigs is just fine for what we're looking at here. And just like that, look at that, we have a brand new machine. And now you see the thumbnail picture here has changed to a Windows 10. These are all for Kali Linux distributions, so that's why they look like that. And this, of course, is a Windows 7 distribution up here. We're going to go ahead and go on up here, and we'll double click here to make this into a more fully functional virtual machine. The Windows ISO file is what we're going to use. It's already detected it, which is good. If this doesn't appear there for some reason, if it, like, say it says Kali Linux and it doesn't say Windows for some reason, you just click the arrow right there and click Windows ISO. And just like that, you should be just fine and good to go. If you need to find it, it's in some special place. You can click the little folder button there. But I'm going to assume that you know how to find a folder on your machine, and that should be just fine. So look at that. We have a fully functional Windows machine happening right in the middle here, which is pretty nice and dandy. This whole installation process is going to take a little bit of time. I'll do my best to hang with you and we'll talk about important things as they happen, but for the most part, we're done. Now it's pretty much just going through the menus and clicking through and deciding what we want. So English, United States, English, yes. The US keyboard, yes. We're using a standard QWERTY, which QWERTY, if you didn't know, it just means the top row to the left is QWERTY in that order. That's why they say a QWERTY keyboard. It's not like that everywhere, but that's just what that happens to mean. Great. It's gonna prompt you for this. It wants you to give a product key, which is something you get when you purchase Windows Online for free, or when you purchase Windows Online or in store. We are not going to use that right now because I want to show you how to take a snapshot so that we can use it for testing purposes. If you are planning on using this for anything permanent, yes, buy Windows. Don't buy anything else. Don't get a product key from some CD website. Buy Windows. Trust me, it's worth it. Anyway, so the product key will look like that. We don't have one yet, so we're going to say I don't have a product key. Again, don't do this if you're going to be using this thing permanently. But in our case, this is a testing environment, so it's okay if this thing dies on us in 15 or 20 days or whatever. So we'll say Windows 10 Home should be fine. I think Windows 10 Pro is a good choice too. I wouldn't go with anything else in the middle necessarily, but I think Windows 10 Home should be just fine. We will click Accept the Terms of Use. And we'll just say Install Windows Only. Next. I just realized my microphone was hanging out completely off screen, so I hope that you could hear me for the majority of that first part. Cool. Anyway, this is going to take a good long time. Looks like we're at 1% so far out of 100, so we have a long way to go. I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. I'll be right back with you as soon as these menus become completely ready to go. So I will be with you when this reaches 100%. Thanks. Okay, and welcome back to our video. Looks like we are wrapping up here. Finally, I'm not gonna lie to you. Between where the last video ended, where the last part ended, and where this one began was about 30 minutes. So there was a lot of downtime to think about there. There was a lot of wait time there to think about. So what I'm gonna do is in future videos, or probably between videos, I will resize this to make this fit the entire window here much better. So what I'm going to do is make sure that this fits all four corners here, and here. Later on to make sure that we have the actual full screen experience here. But as you can see right now, it's detecting where we are located. It's doing that through our NAT network, which I will go into that a little bit later. But we have United States right there, and that's exactly where I am. I happen to be located in the Midwestern United States. So I am definitely in the United States. It's probably going to ask you my time zone next. And when it does, I will signify that, yes, I am in the Eastern time zone. So, by the way, if you happen to have your machine settings a certain way, Cortana will have a very, very, very creepy voice here, which is interesting. Okay, now what keyboard layout are we going to use? Make sure you pick the keyboard layout that is most important to you. In my case, it would be the standard US one right here. But of course, if you're in Canada or if you're in India or Ireland, make sure you pick the one that's appropriate for you wherever you are. Do you want to add a second one? We're going to say no. So skip that one. Now, if you have a second keyboard, you can. Or have a second keyboard, you want to have multiple different layouts, you can. But this is perfectly fine. This is particularly important if you are typing something in Spanish or French or something and you have a second keyboard. But in our case, we're only using the standard English keyboard. So no reason whatsoever for us to have to use the next one, another type of keyboard. So and it's going to give us a couple more things to do here. I'll be right back with you as soon as those wrap up. Great. So next thing on our agenda here will be creating our brand new Microsoft account. Now, I would encourage you, if you're using this like I am for testing purposes or for a temporary environment, then basically consider your Microsoft account here to be a throwaway account. Now, if you are using this permanently, if this is going to be a resident operating system on your machine permanently, then make a secure account, make a real account, and make one that matters, make one that counts, and make sure you understand all the ins and outs of what a Microsoft account is for. We aren't there yet with this machine, so instead we're just going to create a brand new account. And just before, it will take a couple minutes to bring up the actual menu, which shouldn't take too long here, because I think for the most part all of our new ones are all of our time-consuming menus are all up and running. So we're gonna try to click here to get a new email address. I don't think it'll let us actually. Yes, it will. All right. This one's going to be, I don't know. We'll say DaleCodes DaleCodes01 at outlook.com. That should be fine. And make a password. There we go. I won't tell you what it is. Oh. Okay. Okay. We will make a secure password here that we will say is there we go. That one worked. Sometimes the requirements are a little sketchy. We'll go ahead and say March 8th, and then just because I always like to make sure that we are at the very least 18, we'll say 2000. I gotta pick it. Dang it. 2000. 99. 99 should be fine. I hit. I'm an idiot. Microsoft, if you're watching this, fix this. I know I'm not the only one in the world who has this silly problem. Alright, we'll say 99 and check. That looks good. Great. There we go. And yeah, I don't want you to see my phone number, so I'm not going to do that one yet. Instead, I'll use an alternate email, and we will say I'll just block it out and use my phone number. Okay. Very good. Now you can't see that, but I put a very real phone number in there. Now I uncheck both of those. You don't have to. If you want to receive updates and ads and things to your email inbox, that's fine. I do not. So just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we now have a fully functional, working, very real Windows machine running inside a VirtualBox. So me being stingy, not only has one virtual machine out here, but I have another virtual machine in here as well. In just a minute, it should boot up for the very first time, and it'll probably ask me if I would like to set up a pin code or something of the sort. Let's see. And once we've made it through that menu at last, it will ask us if we would like to create a pin, which is always a good idea. Although the cybersecurity guy in me kind of scoffs at that, because I feel like that is a less secure user password than an actual password, or passphrase rather. But we will just leave it as is with a pin. Now it looks like you can put any amount of numbers that you want. I think a pin code is almost inherently always 4, which is kind of alarming, because I feel like most people would just use 4, but we will see. So great. Now we've created a brand new pin code. Both of those codes do match. We are all set and good to go. Now we're going to do this later because I don't have an Android device. I use an iPhone. But if you happen to use an Android device, make sure that you link them together if you want to. Again, this is a throwaway, non-important environment, so I'm not that worried about it. With OneFiles, now we'll save it only to this PC. There's no reason to use OneDrive for a testing environment. Again, if you are using a permanent computer, please make sure that you enable all you need to enable. I am not going to use Cortana, so we're going to decline that. I like Cortana where she is on my home operating system here. I don't want Cortana to operate within the virtual machine. Do more with activity history. We're going to say no. And just like I said before, if you're using this permanently, set these up accordingly. We'll uncheck all of these. Find my device. Inking and typing. Advertising ID. Tailored experiences. Diagnostic data. And location is fine. Very good. So we'll accept all those. Or we will decline the ones we did and accept the, I think we just used location. That's all that's really important anyway. I don't want to give Windows too much information about my, my nonsense machine here. Okay, so almost done now. Setting up a few more things. About time. We're almost an hour into this whole process now, and I'm just now beginning to see the light at the end of this tunnel. Yeah. So I will be right back with you as soon as this menu loads up. Okay, and finally, it looks like we have the final beginnings of a Windows machine up, running, and working on our on our VirtualBox here. So it's going to ask you if you want to make your PC discoverable by other PCs and devices on the network. You know, it's really up to you. It's not going to make a difference for our purposes, up or down, yes or no. I'm going to go ahead and say yes, just because I can, because there's a possibility I'll use this thing for some penetration testing later on, or for vulnerability analysis later on. But for the time being, I think it's fine just to say yes and let it run away. If you're just using this as a throwaway, or you're using this just to practice some kind of technique, or you're just using this as whatever, then maybe no is a better answer for you. So anyway, it looks like now we finally have a working Windows virtual machine. We have a Windows machine right here, Microsoft Edge, Recycle Bin. Everything looks good to go. Let's make sure we have internet connectivity. Oh, looks like we should. Where are we? Oh, yes, we do. Right here through the network here. Let's go ahead and navigate to a web page and make sure that it is fully operational. Ooh, there it is. Nothing worse than Microsoft Internet Explorer, even if it is Microsoft Edge now. And again, this is the dynamically allocation thing happening right now. It will take a little bit of time to get warmed up. So let's go ahead and navigate to google.com. It looks like everything is working just fine. And just like that, we are at google.com. So that's it, guys. That's it for this video. In the next video, I'm probably going to show you how to go about installing some important software and things. But that does it for installing a Windows 10 virtual machine into a VirtualBox VM. So thanks, guys. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your energy here watching this. I hope that you're enjoying watching along at home. I can't wait to get into some actual tutorials here instead of just setting up our labs. But this is an important step, and it's kind of a tricky step. It's definitely a time-consuming one. So I appreciate it, guys. I will see you in the next video. Peace!